Okay, welcome everybody. I'm really excited about doing this interview today because Nancy and Kat with FAMV, Fire Adapted Met How Valley, have been incredible partners to Met How at Home. And some of our members have received their amazing collaboration and attention to help make their homes safer during fire season. And so we wanted to interview FAMV as we come into our next module of our Get Ready program, which is all about fire and emergency preparedness. And these two have done incredible things for this valley. And I think that you both do a lot that's still behind the scenes. And so I'm excited to just bring you forth into everybody's view to know what you've been up to and what people can do and how they can be a part of this movement to become more fire adapted here in fire country with these large scale fires. So FAMV's mission is to foster understanding and means that motivate and enable Met How Valley community members to live adaptively with fire. And so here we are with Nancy Farr, who is the visionary executive director and founder of FAMV, and Kat Heim, who is just an incredible collaborator and diligent program director. So thank you so much, you two, for joining us. And my first question for you today is just for you to give a brief history of FAMV and the experiences that motivated you to create this really important nonprofit.
All right, well, I'm going to take that, Tracy. Thank you so much for this opportunity. We, Catherine and I, and Annabelle, our newest team member, just consider Met How at Home's partnership with us invaluable. It has been for 3 years now. I think we first connected up. So we are a fairly young organization, and we're a tiny organization. Until recently, it's just been Catherine and me, and a lot of partners. So from the very beginning, history, that's what you asked. In 2018, or really early in 2018, I realized that I had the time finally to really delve into the whole issue of how our community could become prepared for wildfires. That by starting in 2014, early, back in the 90s, here when I first moved to the valley, the wildfires that we had regular wildfires. They were in the outlying lands, unfortunately decimating forest lands primarily, but rarely threatening our built environments. But of course that changed dramatically starting in 2014, as probably everyone who's listening is well aware. And it hasn't stopped. And it was clear over that part of that decade that the wildfire risk was becoming more and more critical. Our conditions here in our environment were ripe for it, not having had natural fire for so long. This is an environment that requires fire to be healthy. And we really, as a community, as a large community, we're a small community, but I mean the large, the whole of the Met How Valley, we really have not been living as if we understand the demands of living in fire country. So by 2018, I was motivated to start learning and reaching out to agencies and other organizations, and especially other communities that I had become just sort of serendipitously aware were ahead of us, and we're already doing a lot to become prepared and resilient in fire country. So the first year, I pretty much operated on my own locally, but with agency partners and in particular, Washington Department of Natural Resources, DNR, and the Okanagan Conservation District quickly became really important partners of ours and have continued to be. And then fortunately, I was blessed in 2019 when Catherine stepped forward and began to offer her talents and creativity and, as you say, diligence and enthusiasm for making this community as safe as possible. And so she and I have partnered over the last years now in building up more and more programs, which Catherine's in a great position to describe to you, and hope she'll get the opportunity to do that in this discussion. So I think unless you have any questions, that's enough history. I could go into how Met How at Home and we got involved, but that's maybe more than you need to know right now.
That's wonderful. Yeah, thank you for, choosing to use your time to dive into this question of how we can, live like we understand that we are in a fire dependent ecology. So thanks so much. And yeah, Kat, let's hear from you. What motivated you to get involved?
Well, and Tracy, I'll tell you, my answer will lead into you what I suspect your next question is going to be. So I will just say, there's nothing like owning a busy dog boarding kennel and taking in extra dogs because of Carlton Complex and being full to the brim with dogs and having another fire breakout that comes within 1,000 feet of your property. There's nothing like evacuating 20 dogs to get a fire lit under you, so to speak, and understanding that you need to be doing some things to prepare yourself, your business, with an evacuation plan and a whole preparedness plan that we had, and your neighborhood. And that's what got the ball rolling for me. After Carlton Complex and Rising Eagle, I jumped into working with Okanagan Conservation District to determine what we could be doing to prepare our property, decided that wasn't enough and started talking with neighbors. We did a lot of work in the neighborhood and then just felt really motivated to share and continue working, but I was working full time at that time. So in 2019, I was really happy to link up with Nancy and together be bringing this message to the greater community. And one thing that Nancy, I think was going to touch on and didn't want to take any more time, I'll just say in this last year, we have brought on a program assistant who started as an intern helping us with a program I'll be telling you about and doing amazing work, Annabella Costa. She is our program assistant and is invaluable. So, but I'll just leave it there.
Fantastic. I know. I remember that. I remember the day of the Rising Eagle fire and just how scary, that was. And hearing about you guys on the radio that you were needing help to evacuate. And, yeah, my heart was going out to you all and to everyone living in that area that day. And so, as you say, there's nothing like being threatened that way. That's just will light a fire under. Yeah. Yeah. So this leads into the next question. What does a fire adapted community, human community, look like to you? Or maybe it will go into the to the plants and.
Yeah. Oh, it could, but I think we'll keep it with our community. And Nancy, shall I just start this and then please jump in?
Absolutely.
What I love about Nancy's and my relationship is we are sort of in some ways two peas of in a pod, and then other ways we're flip sides of a coin, and together it's all about partnership. And that is the key to what a fire adapted Methow Valley is. It's all about community, all about partnership. And when you hear those words, just to explain, they have a history, those words. The FEMA and many other organizations dealing with disaster preparedness have really explained the concept well. So I'm just going to, Tracy, if you'll bear with me, the concept of fire adapted communities is basically, it holds that with proper community-wide preparation, human populations and the infrastructure can withstand devastating effects of wildland fire, whether it's reduction of loss of life or loss of property. But the thing is this ability, this goal to do this, to have community-wide preparation, depends on strong and collaborative partnerships within the community, within agencies, within different organizations such as FAMV and Methow at Home. And being a fire adapted community doesn't just mean what I think comes to everyone's mind first, including my own, that everyone has created defensible space and has a go bag ready to go and a disaster plan. It really means that everyone understands that where we live is a place where fire happens, and that people understand why fire happens and how we can coexist in this environment with fire. And think about it, as we consider where we live, we're just a little slice of built community in a whole expansive wildlands, in the whole natural environment. And so there's people in a fire adapted community understand their place, they understand their role, where they live. And yes, being fire adapted means everyone does have a role to play in being safe, or preparing for fire, in being safe during a fire, and yes, in recovering from wildfire. I think recovery is important because we're all impacted by wildfire, whether we have fire on our property or not, whether we have to evacuate. We're breathing the smoke, we hear the sirens. There's a lot of trauma there. So being fire adapted means we have a role and a means for recovering in addition to preparing and being safe. And I think the bottom line, Tracy, is everyone understands we're in this together, and everyone in a fire adapted community has access to the resources, the information they need, and they have a real feeling of collaboration and partnership. And there's help and something in that relationship for everybody. So everybody will be able to live resiliently, ultimately, with wildfire.
Yeah, thank you for that answer. I think that as much as possible, people learning about our nervous systems, as you say, and really understanding how, living through these mega fires affects our nervous system is really a key point that sometimes gets lost in the discussion too.
Yeah,
About
absolutely.
that recovery. So thank you for bringing that forth, and just the knowledge of understanding how fire works and why it works here. And there's a lot of people in older generations who didn't receive any environmental or ecological education in their time in school. So thank you for bringing all that to the forefront too. Nancy, do you have anything to add there?
I just want to add the neighborhood cooperation, neighborhood partnership. Catherine mentioned a lot of levels of involvement and partnering, and the one that you missed was the name at the neighborhood level, because that's super important. And it was something that was so clear to me when as I was thinking about getting involved in this area in 2018, was that there already was good organization in a few of our large neighborhoods, our homeowners, through homeowners associations, very active, very effective in organizing on a neighborhood level and bringing in the resources to reduce their fuels and all. But the contrast between that neighborhood level work, which we do need to, and it's one of our programmatic areas, is to continue to expand the neighborhoods that are involved in this. But there wasn't a community-wide effort, and folks like me and Catherine, who weren't at that time in neighborhoods that were already organized, really were not, didn't have the resources for educating themselves and becoming involved, and encouragement to organize with others and seek out the resources. So
Yeah.
anyway.
Yeah, I would just add to that. Thank you, Nancy, because yeah, what you just called attention to is actually in this area, there has been over the last 2 decades, a lot of work done in different neighborhoods and communities where there are just shining stars and shining examples of where neighborhoods said, hey, we've got a problem. Like in 2000 or the early 2000s, there are a couple neighborhoods up further to the north, and I'm not thinking of any homeowners association. This is bigger neighborhoods where they had some very scary fires come very close to their neighborhoods. And there were community members who said, we need to do something. And they started partnering with the different public land managers and fuel managers to find ways to bring in some help to do some neighborhood fuel reduction in the areas that were adjacent to public lands. And so it was so amazing to me as Nancy and I were doing everything we were doing. And as I started talking with individuals in different communities, I was so excited to realize there have been strategies in place for years. And so what's important is to have a way to get word out about that whole history, and help people see that they're not alone in trying to do this, and there are many ways to do this, and other communities have been doing it successfully. So
yeah, I think sometimes, you know, as somebody who has been evacuated, and I've been in a couple of different kinds of neighborhoods, it can be confusing to know, you know, where the resources are,
yeah.
or who the players are. Like, when do I call DNR? Who do I reach out to?
Yeah.
You know, or the Okanagan Conservation District.
Yeah.
It's so wonderful to have you two who have those relationships. And
that is one of our key functions, is to act as a hub for information, to act as a connector. Catherine and I, fortunately, have both been here a long time and have a lot of network tentacles in place already. And then through this work, we have extended that out to so many other sources of help and information. And we're constantly, this field of how to prepare, how best to be safe, and how to collaborate with the agencies, as Catherine referred to. So many of our neighborhoods are contiguous with public lands, so the cross-boundary communications and understanding of needs and plans and capabilities is so important. So there's just, and this field is endless in terms of what can be accomplished,
Yeah.
what really needs to be accomplished over time. And so
Yeah.
we take our steps, do what we can. And
Yeah.
And you know, I just have to interject Nancy. See, this is what happens with Nancy and me. I love this. Her idea sparks my idea sparks another idea. And what I just want to say is one of the real benefits of what Nancy and I do is FAMV is a member of a statewide learning network. It's the Washington Fire Adapted Communities Learning Network. And what's so amazing is we are in constant contact and able to learn from people like us and people who are doing other aspects of the fire preparedness, fire mitigation, the whole line of all different kinds of fire practitioners. So and foresters, and we're able to learn from them what they're doing. We're able to share what we're doing. And so there's an opportunity not just to connect with partners around here, but to even connect on a statewide level and also on a national level to learn from others who are dealing with the same situations. And that is a tremendous resource.
Yeah, I've been to their website and there are just an incredible amount of resources there. And, you know, as somebody who's, you know, it's like, it's spring, it's dry. I'm already feeling, you know, nervous about the upcoming season. And I'm like looking around my property and there's just sometimes it can be a state of overwhelm, whether it's like so many things to do or so many resources available. So this is kind of a tough question. You two might have different thoughts on this, but like as a person of the Met Howell Valley, what would be the top 3 priorities that you would recommend for folks?
Kat, you want to take that first?
Sure, I'll jump in first. And I'm going to surprise you with my first answer, perhaps, because well, maybe you'll see. I just think this is what I have discovered. Seems to work well for people, and so to motivate people, I would say this: what's the top thing that I would, if I could motivate individuals to do, would be to be in community with one another, to actively engage together, to learn how we can coexist with wildland fire, how we can reduce large fire threats ultimately, to learn about our landscape, about you know, what's the history of this area with fire? How has it been on the land before? And how does that relate to our present situation? And to learn then how we can work with others, how we can learn from others, and then to connect with others and to engage in actual practices, learn from your neighbors, how, you know, what are people doing? Call up FAMV and say, hey, can you have someone come look at my property? Let's talk about what I can do. Hey, what do? I have horses. Should I be evacuating them? Work with your neighbors, develop plans for how you all can deal together with each stage of preparing for fire, what happens if there is a fire, what happens afterwards, and engage in ways to learn how to keep yourself in the present moment. Because one of the most difficult things I think that inhibits, and Tracy, you touched on this, inhibits us from moving forward is our own nervous systems, is that whenever we hear a siren or smell smoke in summer, we go instantly to a very bad physical and mental place. It's scary. And so there are methods, and I think I'll touch on those when we get into our programs addressing that. Welcome new neighborhoods here. So those are some of the, engage and be in community, and then really engage in identifying your strategies and in helping others identify their strategies. Methow at Home is so good at this. Tracy, I love what you guys have done, because your community members, your Methow at Home members, have come up with a buddy system. You have systems in place for people working to prepare, to get ready for a fire, to develop their evacuation plans, have a go bag, and you offer a lot of support and all that. And I think that's key. I'd like people to think about landscape scale. So if you are living in an area where you could get others to also prepare their property, whether that's public landowners or other private landowners, then you are creating a bigger area that is likely to not be able to invite fire into it, whether it's embers or flame. And that's going to really help. So I think those are some of the key things I'd like to see people motivated to do. Nancy, I know you're going to have more, and I'd love to hear what you have to say.
No, I just want to be sure that that people heard in your statement that how important it is to do what is known now as firewizing their own properties, our own properties, either because we have the capacity to do it ourselves or reach out to others to get help to take care of it. And as we know, there are a lot of folks who can't do it themselves. So that's why our Equitable Mitigation program is so important. And if we have time, Kat will, I'm sure, love to talk about that. But, you know, we want to make sure that we don't de-emphasize the importance of creating defensible space on our properties, creating fire-resistant area right around especially the home, but any buildings that can catch fire. So, because embers are so critical in wildfire spread. So one can talk about firewizing forever, but just want to make sure that that's not missed.
Yeah, I'm constantly learning so much from both of you, and from just, you know, being a part of bearing witness to the properties that you're helping to mitigate. And, you know, sometimes I think it's easy to think like, oh, my barn over there, like, if I lose that, but then it's like, no, that is not that far from my neighbor. It's like quite a bit farther from my house, but not my neighbor. So I love that you're bringing that forth first, is it's about working together to protect each other. You know?
Yeah, Tracy, thank you for saying that. And you're reminding me that sometimes people also say, well, you know, I'm well insured. If I lose my home, you know, it'll be replaced. It's okay. But I really like people to think about their neighbors, even who may not be well insured. If we ourselves are well insured, that doesn't mean that our whole neighborhood is equally. So fire knows no boundaries. You know,
exactly.
It's so obvious. And but we don't always think that way. You know, we often think about our own personal situation, but our neighbors affect us, and we affect our neighbors in wildfire as well as everything.
Yeah,
and
that's why I think it's so important as we have a shift in paradigm, as we think about what does it mean to live here, what are our roles and responsibilities. I think part of that is that we recognize the Methow Valley has a lot of newcomers who come from a place where fire is not the kind of issue that it is here. And when we say dry and we say crunchy, that means something very different to us than it would to someone who comes from a wetter area. And so part of our role is to welcome people and to share with them, here's what it means to live here. And gosh, if you're going to be building your house, have you thought about contacting the Met Howell Conservancy and getting their new neighbor handbook and learning about FireWise principles, and we can share those FireWise principles with you. You know, and just being an ambassador for our area. We live in fire country. You know, some people live in bear country, and I always think about how when I go in those areas, there's all kinds of really helpful information to me, telling me, you know, don't wear hairspray. Well, I don't anyway, but, you know, be sure to don't cook in your tent. You know, and so I think if each of us think in terms of being an ambassador and helping people understand there's a very different culture and a very different way we need to live here. That's
absolutely. I know I've always thought like it'd be so good as people enter the valley to have there be signs like don't park in the grass, don't pull your car near tall grass, you know, while you're here. Certainly don't throw your cigarette butt out the window. Because there certainly are human caused fires, and that just is, you know, even with equipment or oily rags, right? There's just so many things.
We haven't heard it all, but we've had a lot of cases like that. Human cause is the greatest, the largest, by far, the largest cause. Way more than lightning. Yeah.
And it's not, as Guy Gifford, who's one of our wonderful partners, he's with DNR, was saying at our last workshop we did, it's not the kids who are the ones starting these fires and the human caused. It's the adults. And it's interesting to look at all the different causes. And the other thing I would just add to that is there's new research coming out that says, you know, we commonly think that the fires these days start in the wildlands and travel into where we all live. But they're finding that actually more of the devastating fires start in, and this is a Oregon University study that just recently came out, that more of the devastating fires that burn communities start in the communities and are human caused. So that, you know, that's not to say you're not going to have a lot of fire in the wildland, but the ones that actually enter communities, a lot of those actually start in the communities. So it's good. That's why it's so important for people to understand what it means to live here. You know, the do's and don'ts. You know, like you were saying, Tracy, don't park your hot car on dry grass.
Or have a, you know, there was a fire that started because somebody, you know, was burning something maybe at a different time, but it like maybe they burned, I think, in a whole rail tie area or something, and it's like people don't realize like those fires can be smoldering for weeks and sometimes, and then just
exactly.
I know. Education, right? So so huge and key. So thank you, you two. So that brings us to your programming, and what programs would you like the community to know that you two are orchestrating?
Oh, well, I think the one that is certainly feels like it's our beloved child who is developing and growing is the Equitable Mitigation Program. And basically the premise for that means when you live in a community like this, there are people who do not have the means, whether it's income or disability or age or multiple other factors that will impact this. There's a lot of social factors, just even working multiple jobs so you have no time and you have children and you have elders living at your home. There's so many different factors that can impact people's ability to be able to get any of their own preparation done. and they can't pay for others to do it, and they can't do it. So does that mean that those people don't ever get prepared for wildfire? That certainly isn't being a fire adapted community. So we've been working and partnering, and I will say we've had some amazing partners. Met How at Home has been a consistent and amazing partner with this. Early on, it was Met How at Home and Kiwanis, and then we started working also with Department of Natural Resources and utilizing their expertise, and also they would bring in AmeriCorps members who were WCC crew and forest health specialists. We've worked with Met How Episcopal Youth Group, Outward Bound, and what are we doing? We are finding ways to identify people who are in need of mitigation and can't do it for the reasons discussed above, and matching them with the expertise where we can get an assessment done, develop a treatment plan, and then working with all these different amazing crews, find a way to help reduce their wildfire risk by taking small steps to help harden the home, like we've put in the 1/8 inch mesh screening in places over soffits, open soffits, preparing a ember-free zone around a home, and then reducing the vegetative fuels and also other fuels. You know, Tracy, a lot of people, when you live in the valley for 40 years and you've lived here and you over time accumulate stuff, and getting rid of stuff is not easy in this valley, and it's very expensive. People are going to have fuels other than just vegetative fuel that will catch fire, and some of it will be toxic, and like tires burn, they're very toxic when they burn. And so to the extent we can eliminate those fuels, that's going to really help. Whatever can be done to help open a property up to be more resistant to embers and to fire spread, and also be a property where if you have crew coming in into an area, they can see that they would be safe at that property trying to defend it, because firefighter safety is really important too. So this project we've been doing through this whole means of selection and then identifying property, assessing the property, bringing in crew. We've been taking it very slowly. We're still developing the program. Annabelle Acosta did a bunch of research for us this last year to see what other entities have been doing. She had to go farther than Washington to find where this kind of model is working, but she has found a number of other models. We've been working on a presentation to the steering committee that we have, and we will be developing a turnkey package of how do you run a program like this. But meanwhile, we've been working with Team Rubicon, which is a veteran-led, veteran-based volunteer organization who typically in the past did disaster recovery work. They want to get into mitigation because it's just nice to not have to help someone after the fact. And so we're bringing the Team Rubicon crews in here in June, and we'll be looking at mitigating or reducing fuels on 3 properties here in the Mantow Valley. And the goal is to do this every spring and fall, and to try and grow the program to where we can bring in more crews and affect more houses more quickly. And it's developing a program like this, I will say, is intense, and it takes a lot of staff power, a lot of research, and a lot of good wisdom from a good steering committee. I will just share, Tracy is actually on that steering committee and her advice has been invaluable. So I think I'll stop there. Nancy, would you add anything on our EMP program?
No, excuse me. I think you should go on to
Yeah.
whatever other programs you want to emphasize today. So
Yeah, so I'm gonna lump a couple of programs. A lot of what we do is to work with partners to help develop and implement strategies and methods for community members to coexist with fire. And Nancy mentioned the most, I think, a level where it's really important and you get a lot of work done, and that's in working with neighborhoods. And so we work with FireWise neighborhood coordinators, both those where you already have a neighborhood developed and they've created a FireWise USA site where they're registered as being a FireWise site. That means they're likely to get grants from public agencies to help them do work and that sort of thing. So it's a real good motivator for people to be FireWise USA site neighborhoods. But we also work with other coordinators who are developing disaster preparedness and disaster plans who aren't yet registered as FireWise neighborhood sites. And we work with neighborhoods and neighborhood coordinators and spark plugs in those communities where they're looking to do something and they're trying to find out how they do it. So we work and we help them with a lot of peer sharing, because they can tell each other what they've been doing and they can learn from each other. That's been a really good model. We work with a lot of other organizations in the Valley. I'll name a few: Clean Air Methow, Department of Ecology, Resilient Methow, Okanagan Solid Waste Department, the Town of Twist, Department of Natural Resources, Okanagan Conservation District, basically to bring fuel reduction resources to our community through chipping events and chipping days, through dumpsters for neighborhoods, through the work at the transfer station for yard waste, fuel reduction. And so this year we've taken more of a advisory role in working behind the scenes with Clean Air Methow and Resilient Methow in getting that work done. But that's a really important program. And then we collaborate a lot for education and demonstration. So at the new Winthrop Library, we're working with a wonderful collaborative committee on developing a fire-resistant interpretive landscape. I mean, what better way to reach out to the entire community and to visitors to share, here's what you can do, here's what we're doing to be fire-resistant, fire-resilient. We also partner with organizations, including Methow at Home, to share approaches to understanding how to live in this fire environment and live safely. And right now, Tracy, I am so excited because we've, for over a year, been developing with some amazing partners from the state of Washington, Public Education Institute, Pyrosketchology, and the Department of Natural Resources, and then also from Paradise, California, an amazing gentleman who deals with the whole neurological connection to trauma and to how do you learn and face ongoing situations such as living in a fire environment when you have underlying trauma and a PTSD even. So we've been all working together to develop a education, or rather a educator's professional development workshop on how to use nature journaling about the fire environment to help students of all ages. We've focused on the youth, but we also have focused on other ages in developing observational skills and inquiry and agency in dealing with their situation, looking at the fire environment, checking the weather, checking all the signs they see in nature to develop a better understanding of their current situation. And so that's something that is ongoing, and we're actually hoping to share with Methow at Home in this amazing series that you're putting together, Tracy, for the month of May. it's a fabulous series of workshops you've put together. We're grateful to be a part of it. So I
Yeah.
think those are what I'd highlight. Yeah.
I'm certainly looking forward to that. I think orientation is just such a really important skill to like help, like you say, to ground our nervous system and what's happening right here, right now. So
Yeah. Yeah.
Nancy, did you have anything to add to your programs that?
No, Catherine is our program guru and driver. She's incredibly dedicated and creative, and so I defer to Catherine.
Fantastic. Maybe I'll give this question to you, Nancy, first. Just how can people support your work? Met How, folks from the Met How or outside of the Met How who are inspired by what you're doing, because, you developing this network of things is also something that can be, exported into other communities. So it can be valuable for people all over the planet, really, as we deal with more extreme climate.
Yeah.
How can we support you?
Well, thank you for asking that. There are several ways that all of you can support us in supporting the community, and as you say, the broader community of areas that are affected by wildfire. And there are several key ways. One, we've already talked about a lot, which is to engage in learning. So sorry. Connect with your neighbors, get involved in community activities that are contributing to the welfare of the landscape and our homes and our communities, our towns, our built infrastructure. So engagement in a variety of ways would be the first one that I would encourage. The second is to volunteer. When one feels comfortable and experienced to a degree, it's wonderful to reach out and help others to become involved, more knowledgeable, more aware. So volunteering, there are a whole lot of ways that folks can volunteer to contribute to the work that we do, and even see your own, recognize other ways that you might help the community become more fire adapted. And then the third way you could help us is to donate. We certainly need, I spend a lot of my time trying to develop funds to make all of these efforts happen. And the more support we have financially, the more we can do, more we can accomplish. So we have a way on our website, fireadaptedmethow.org, to donate funds to us. And we, this past year, began participating in the wonderful Give Met How program. And the community was generous with us in our first go at that program. And so I encourage folks to participate in that and support Fire Adapted Met How Valley, as well as other organizations, every October through the super easy way to contribute to the community through Give Met How. I do want to come back to the volunteer activity, because some of you may, some people might wonder, well, what specifically can we do there? And Catherine alluded to the upcoming programs this spring for supporting folks in reducing fuels without doing backyard burning, which, backyard burning not only is potentially a source of an uncontrolled wildfire. Unfortunately, that does happen. But it also, of course, creates a lot of smoke, a lot of pollution in our air. And so Catherine knows how that all is happening this year and how people can get involved. So Kat, why don't you give a plug for volunteering in that particular way?
Absolutely. So I will say, we say volunteer on our website, but we rely on an amazing website. And Tracy, I'll send you the link after this meeting. I didn't pull it up, but there's a website here in the Methow Valley called Volunteer Methow. And so that's one that a lot of organizations use to get their volunteers for different particular events. So next week, I think, yes, April 22nd, actually it's the 20th, the 22nd, and then the 29th. There will be free yard waste only disposal days at the Twist transfer station. The Twist transfer station is closed for anything except people bringing their yard waste. And because we have apple maggot quarantine, you definitely have to bring it a certain way. Woody materials, vegetative materials need to be separate. So imagine all these cars coming to the transfer station. The transfer station is providing staff to actually run the transfer station, but so many wonderful volunteers are needed to help direct traffic, to take an initial survey, to answer any questions people have, to help guide them into where they're going to unload their materials. Last year, it was really helpful to have at least 5 volunteers for each shift. And this will be going from 10 o'clock until 3 o'clock on each of those 3 days. So I've signed up. And I would love to see some familiar faces there. It's a great place to visit and get a chance to share with others what you're doing and what they're doing and learn. And we had a great time last year, and I know we will this year too. So that's on the Volunteer Methow site where you can sign up.
And Kat, for people who are going to engage and reduce fuels around their properties and gather things up, or find somebody who has a truck who can help, who can load for them and take it down to the transfer station, can you just say real quickly what kinds of things? Like, I'm thinking of the pine needles. It was so amazing last year. I was shocked at so many enormous loads of pine needles, and it was such a great way to get rid of them. And it's really the only way to get them off of your property without burning, which we don't want to be happening, especially with pine needles, because of the smoldering that goes on, and it just goes on and on and on. It goes deep in the soil. So is there anything else you would add about what can be brought or what can't be brought to?
Yes, absolutely. So,
and Tracy, I hope we're not violating too badly your time.
No,
Here we're really going on.
I know. At the same time, we're had our first foot care clinic, and so I just one of our members was confused about which office to go to, so I had to run and point them in that direction.
Oh, good. Oh, good. Oh, well, I'll be quick. And I think the best thing to do, Tracy, I'm going to share with you the PDF that explains everything about this, so that you can share it with your membership and they can have that. But basically it is that it's any branches, tree limbs. You can even bring a whole tree in, but it needs to be, you don't want it to be too long. So 4 feet is a good length. You don't want it to be big rounds, because that will not go through a chipper. So what happens here in Apple Maggot quarantine place, you have to have anything that is natural wood be chipped, and then it's chipped, it's mixed with the vegetative material, thrown into this giant steamer, and they steam it, and only then can it leave our area. So you can't bring in big firewood rounds to be chipped, because it can't be chipped, and you can't bring in lumber or treated wood, so no fence posts. But anything that is and no root balls, but pretty much anything like pine cones, pine needles, grass, leaves, weeds, tree branches, any of that. That's what you can bring. And I second what Nancy said. I will tell you, we were holding a contest to see who brought the most loads. And we had a gentleman who I lost count after 7 loads of a truck full of pine needles. And all I could think was, thank goodness he's doing this, because obviously there's a lot of duff on his property where an ember would have a field day. So,
Well, and I think he was carrying materials from other neighbors' properties as well. Or at
I
least
hope so.
some of the folks that I talked to while they were parked there waiting to go in were bringing materials from their neighbors, which is so helpful because not everybody has a truck or a trail, you know, a small come along trailer
Yeah.
to pull. So Gordon is another example of
Yeah.
how when people need to reach out to their neighbors. And so if you have a truck and you have a little time in those 3 days to help out a neighbor, see who you can help.
Yeah, there's a good silent volunteer activity where you don't have to sign up for anything, but boy, howdy, that's important work. So
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's probably a good note to end on is, you know, that helping out our neighbors and looking out for each other. And thank you so much, you two. Any final words that you want to end on here?
For me, just to express my gratitude to you and the whole Meadow Valley, Meadow at Home organization and all of your volunteers who provide the types of support to neighbors and the community as a whole that we've been talking about. We've been talking about it specific to fire preparedness, fire response, but your work is it covers it all. So thank you. And thank you for giving us this opportunity to share what we do.
yeah.
Oh, no, this is so inspiring. I'm sitting here. Oh, what am I going to do with all those tires out in my open barn? So yeah, I learned so much just from being in conversation with you two every time. Thank you so much. And
Yeah.
with
Thank
that, I'm
you,
going to
Tracy.
stop the record. And so hopefully people will read the article, go to your website, donate generously, and call that neighborhood party together and look
Yeah.
at the history of fire there and what they can do to engage in this effort. So
And I'll just raise my hand and say, and if you want to talk with me about things that you can do or ideas, and I figure what happens is when I work with a neighborhood, I'm there to offer them ideas and support, and basically they get to drive. They're the ones who get to make the choices, but I'm there as a resource. And so I'd be very happy to be a resource for your membership, Tracy.
fantastic. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, you two, thanks so much. I'm going to press stop on this recording.
Oh.
Thank you.